Hello again, everyone. I'm Harry James Taylor. This will officially be Game 3 of the OU football season. It's the first conference game since they'll play Notre Dame later in the year. Replacing Notre Dame early in the year will be Kansas State. It will be the 93rd meeting between these two conference foes. If you'll remember, the last meeting was a 58-17 victory in Manhattan for the Sooners. Last year, the aforementioned Kansas State Wildcats went 10-3. They went 7-2 in the Big 12 Conference. They did go to a bowl, so their bowl playoff scenario it ended with a loss to the University of Arkansas at the Cotton Bowl, in one of the greatest football venues that you'll ever experience. I enjoyed my experience out there at Cowboy Stadium. Arkansas wins that one, 29-16 at Cowboy Stadium. Jerry's World, as some call it. Their head coach there in Manhattan at Kansas State is a guy that Bob Stoops knows very, very, very well. His name is Bill Snyder. He is a long-time coach at Kansas State. 2 stints. In those 2 stints, he has a career 159 wins with 83 losses and a tie in there also. Last year, the Wildcats averaged 38.1 points per game. Their graduate of the year last year was Emmanuel Lumar. He had a career 83 tackles, an interception, and 2 forced fumbles last year. As far as returning offensive players, we all know about this guy. He threw for 1,900 yards and 13 touchdowns. Colin Klein, basically the hardest working quarterback in the league. I like this guy. He's a good quarterback. He's in there. He gets back there. He does what he has to do to win. I like this guy. Helping him out at running back is Jonathan Hubert. Hubert had 200 carries last year for 970 yards and 3 touchdowns. Of course, a wide receiver, Colin Klein, throwing for 1,900 yards. He's got to have somebody to throw to, right? Well, he does. It's Chris Harpter. He had 40 catches, 547 yards, and 5 touchdowns all last year. On the defensive side of the ball, their returning defensive player is Anthony Brown. He had 101 tackles and a pick last year in their 10-3 season. At kicker, Anthony Catelli returns, going 17 for 23 last year with a 73.9% completion field goal rating and a 54 as a long. On the other side of it, you know you got to have a punter too, right? Particularly in your Kansas State. Well, they do. It's Ryan Dorr. Dorr had 67 tackles last year, an average of 40.8 yards per punt, and a career-high 65 in their final conference tilt with Texas A&M, the Aggies. I told you guys that I had like a completely amazing stat here. Well, here it is. Since Stoops came to Oklahoma and faced with Bill Snyder, and they went head-to-head. Of course, their first match was in 2000. Oklahoma won that game, but here's an amazing stat. In that one and every other game that Oklahoma, Bob Stoops, and Kansas State, Bill Snyder have played, they've all been nip and tuck. Right there. 10 points, 7 points, 3 points. Butting heads. Except for 2 games. The 0-3 game that we played in Kansas City, And Kansas State won that one 31-7. And last year's game, a 58-17 win over Kansas State. Except for those two games. They've both been nip and tuck. They've both been right there, butting heads. And in those two games, Kansas State the first time, and us last year, they were both coming off emotional disappointments. Kansas State disappointed that they weren't really getting the love that they needed to get that year. They came in and felt completely disrespected. Everybody was expecting Oklahoma to use Jason White and that defense, and Brandon Jones, Mark Clayton, Mark Bradley, Brandon Jones, and just go in there and just throw for like zillion yards. Oh, by the way, the first touchdown of the game came on the ground. Kewan Jones scored the first 7 OU points. But, and then last year, we felt a little bit disrespected. Everybody knows what happened the week before. That was an emotional loss to Texas Tech. Really, I feel like that game with Texas Tech was a little bit, I'm going to be frankly honest with you. It's more disappointing than the Bedlam loss of 01. And I'll tell you why. The 01 team, they lost Bedlam to OSU. They came back and they beat Arkansas in the Cotton Bowl that year. The OU Texas Tech game, they really didn't come back and do anything after that. They came back the next week and beat Kansas State. Obviously, a top 10 team. After that, though, they really didn't show me a whole lot. Their next couple of games, Texas A&M was in that realm. Once the receiver went down, Ryan Broyles went down in that game against Texas A&M. They really, I'm not going to say that they tanked it, but they lost to Baylor and OSU. And wow. I mean, that can't happen. And really, we lost those games not because of Ryan Broyles, but because we couldn't get enough stops. Which is really why I think Mike Stoops came back to Oklahoma. Not to mention the fact he was fired from Arizona. I'll break down OU here after the season's over. After I do everybody else. So I'll get more into that. But that's just my thoughts. Like I said, Kansas State will be the third conference game. I mean, the third game of the season. The third game of the season, first conference game. Second conference game, revenge at Texas Tech. So we'll break down that one. We all know what happened last time in that last meeting, don't we? Ooh, kind of want to forget that, don't we? It was a fun night, though, with all the rain and stuff that went on. This is Harry James Taylor. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And Boomer Sooner!